Welcome, Nitty Gritty. We are here for a new episode with Jay Davis and Will Beck of Pillow Cube. So thank you, fellas, for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
And I will say the pillows are awesome. I'm super picky. I told Will, he was asking me about pillows. I'm like a really, really picky pillow person.
Yeah.
Like that's the worst thing about traveling for me is there is nothing worse than a hotel pillow. I've never had a hotel pillow. I'm like, oh, this is really nice.
They're the worst.
They suck.
Well, when you stay at a Motel 6 everywhere you go.
Hey. Blow, dude.
Holiday Inn Express.
Yeah, like I might be in a courtyard every now and then. Like, come on.
If they don't have free breakfast, that's a good thing.
No, it's not. I don't get my money's worth.
So even the nice ones are
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Because
they're
everybody
so
has
fluffy, and then you just sink in.
Yeah, what's with the feather crap? Like
Who likes a fluffy pillow?
Not me.
No
Stupid
one.
people.
Yeah, like at least do like half cotton, half synthetic, the down pillows.
Yeah.
I don't know what the thing is. Do most people sleep on down pillows?
People, I think it's definitely shifting. We actually were on a flight with David Nealman. We were pitching him. He's like, I love my
Who's David Nealman?
JetBlue founder.
Oh, okay.
And just like randomly sitting next to us on a Delta flight.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
Owns one, owns
JetBlue's
the second,
always
now he's
delayed.
flying on Delta.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, down. We're like, what are you talking about, man?
That's interesting.
You got enough money. You should upgrade.
Yeah.
Like,
For
let's
real.
get away from the down fluffy crap.
That's the thing is it just I always wonder, it seems like it's 5-1 down pillows in hotels.
Oh, it's always
Like the only cotton ones are the ones that they have in like the closet.
yeah.
Like the spare bedding package that they have.
Like the decorative
Crazy.
ones that you don't really know what
Yeah, I
use
use those a lot too with the towel on top. So
Towel.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
you can't
thing.
get
I don't
your
know
face
what's
on
on
it.
those
Yeah.
You don't know
decorative throw
who's been
pillows.
naked.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, I'm excited to actually hear about this a little bit. So Jay, I want to know a little bit more about you. Like, where'd you grow up? Like, how did this all come to be?
So I grew up in kind of half and half Chicago, half Colorado.
Okay.
So yeah,
I still
Bulls fan.
Still order
growing up.
Giordano's.
Oh, dude.
Freeze
So good.
dried, sending out. Oh,
Yeah.
where in Chicago did you grow up?
Just west of Chicago, so Naperville.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I sold alarms for like 8 years in Chicago.
Oh, no way.
I did 2 summers in
I
Chicago.
love
Yeah.
Chicago. We
Chicago-
were west suburbs too.
Chicago in the summer is like
Yeah,
unbelievable. And then you go in the winter and you're like, this
Oh,
place
no.
sucks.
Yeah.
It's so bad. But like fall, spring, winter, or spring, summer, fall is just,
It's the only big city I like. I don't really like
Yeah.
big cities,
It's
but
such an-
I love Chicago.
it was a very ideal, kind of idyllic childhood of like Stranger Things without all the monsters. So it was pretty great. I can't complain. No, it was
that
super
reference.
fun. Yeah.
So started in Chicago and then moved to Colorado.
Yep, then moved to Colorado when I was 10. Lived in Colorado, just kind of normal kid. Played basketball, football. Will was down the street. Never met somehow.
In Colorado.
Yeah,
I grew up in Littleton.
yeah. And so
Wow.
we were neighboring high schools. We have common friends. We went to like the same dances. We're like, dude, how did we never one time?
We played in a basketball game against each other.
Oh yeah, played like I don't know. It's crazy that we never made the connection, but then became friends at BYU. So
That's
yeah.
wild.
So came out to BYU, studied entrepreneurship, and just kind of knew from
What was like your parents, like mom and dad, entrepreneurs?
dad's an entrepreneur,
Okay.
consultant.
Okay.
Always, most part, probably half of my childhood worked for himself.
Okay.
Other half would work for bigger companies or bigger consulting firms. And then, yeah, so, but I was never the kid. Like, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are like, I was selling potatoes door to door, like, and that just wasn't me.
Yeah.
Like, I was never like kind of that hustle, like, I'm going to go sell stuff.
Jay was busy trying to sell girls.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, like pitching them to
Pitching
date
them.
me. Not, I wasn't selling them on the black market.
Could go a couple ways. Yeah.
That didn't really click with me when he said selling girls. I was like, yeah, that didn't really.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
until
what are
you
you
said the
doing?
black market thing, I was like, oh yeah, that could have been taken. That way. You're
Pitching would have been a better word.
Right. Yeah.
That was, yeah, but that was just never kind of my kind of path, but I think it was super interesting kind of how people arrive in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love talking about business. That was kind of what me and my dad talked about when I was a kid, like either sports or business.
Okay.
And so it was just kind of always like, this is this company's strategy, because he was often consulting with like bigger companies, like Fortune 100 companies. And so I was just always like, oh, that's fascinating. Why do they do that? And why do they make the products this way? So I've always loved kind of that business side.
Okay.
Came to BYU, studied entrepreneurship, loved my time at BYU. It was just so fun, such a fun time of life. Met my wife there, got married, graduated in 2008, which is a bad time to graduate, but got lucky, found a job at Vivint doing product development. And so...
Interesting.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Kind of that like perfect timing of, it was like right when it was still Apex.
Yep.
I don't know if that's who you sold for.
I was.
That's why I switched over.
Oh, okay.
All the time. I love those
The blue bellies.
the blue belly signs.
Yeah.
Signs.
So yeah, it was just kind of that perfect time of like Apex was switching to, hey, let's stop selling other people's products. Let's make our own. While still at BYU, I was doing customer service for them, and then just like they had this product development position open, and so it was really great. Like amazing experience. Todd,
You got to see all that growth too.
Yeah,
it was
like,
a pretty exciting time.
I was there during the Vivint rebrand. I threw out the idea to do 2 eyes. I'm just going to claim that.
Hey.
Okay.
They originally were going to sell it with an I and an E, and I was like, that's a horrible idea. So, but yeah, like just got to be a part of that kind of whole experience and see kind of like Todd and those other guys there of like their ability to see something coming. Like, hey, I was doing a lot of research about like security and stuff, and just kind of was able to see a great entrepreneur like, okay, this is kind of what's happening in the industry, and how am I going to react to that and kind of get ahead of everybody. So really fun experience. Was there. Then I helped, then I left and helped start a company called The Color Run, which was kind of that 5K with colored powder.
Yep.
We were the first ones, and had a mission companion that invited me to come and help, and one of the first employees, and just super fun experience. That went crazy. That was just like,
What did you do for them?
so marketing, product development, helping manage races. Like it was everything.
Okay.
It was just wild. I mean, that company, like even people in Utah don't know how fast that whole, like, it was kind of like 2011, they like end of 2011, they kind of launched, and then December of 2011, I joined. And it was just like, oh, we got a couple events open, and it went from, oh, we have a couple thousand people signed up for each event to like, we have 100,000 people showing up to our website, and we have
What was that?
10,000.
I remember, like, it just got super popular. Like, why? Like, why did that catch so quickly?
I think it was a lot of things. I mean, that was kind of my first experience with like virality and explosive growth, but I think a lot of it was social media was ripe for it. People were, those earlier days of Facebook. It was back when every time you posted something on Facebook, every single one of your friends saw it.
Yeah.
So that was great. People were looking for Facebook or using Facebook as kind of like, here's cool things I'm doing. And so people were sharing like, look at this funny video, like that's not, now we just argue on Facebook about politics. But but like back then it was like, hey, look, we were looking for social currency of like, I'm in the know, I know cool things. And so even going to those events, I was like, dude, this is like, the powder gets in your nose. We called them, you'd get the rainbow boogers. Like, it's crazy. And even I've been to the Holly Festival. To me, it's just kind of is like, this is nuts, but it's great social currency.
Yeah.
And so people were posting like, look what I did. And it was just going crazy. I mean, we really went from like, how do we get more people to sign up to we were opening events and selling out 25,000 tickets that were $50 a piece in like an hour.
Jeez.
Like we were just, it was so crazy to see that explosive growth. So
When you look back at that, what was something that surprised you the most, like from the marketing side?
from the marketing side, I think like, one is definitely that like sometimes things just hit and you really didn't mean to do it. You didn't maybe engineer it, but it's also, I think, interesting as an entrepreneur to see that like a lot of those decisions that I think all kind of went towards making something successful are very kind of, you can call it luck or just kind of like, fortuitous that it happened a certain way. Like I look at like the guy who started it originally wanted it to be like a marathon. And I think it was like his wife and one of the other guys who was like, no, like it really should be a 5K. Like let's get people into
Make
running.
it more fun, yeah.
What about a marathon?
Yeah.
No, you don't want me to do the half marathon lecture again?
A marathon.
There's you're nodding your head. Right,
there's an ongoing discussion about the need to rebrand a half marathon.
It's a good point.
Thank you. Everyone agrees with me.
I mean, you're
Funny
basically
that a guy
saying,
who's
like,
never run in his life is the one that's complaining about that.
you're really upset about this.
I just think it's funny, like half marathon. I'm like, I ate a half of a cheeseburger.
yeah.
Like it just needs its own name. That's all I'm saying.
Just needs to rebrand.
It's still hard. It's still respect, but
Yeah.
sorry, I'll shut up.
No, we don't have half basketball games or
Thank you.
half
I'm
hockey
just going to
games.
say that. That's better than the cheeseburger.
There's a
reference.
good analogy. But yeah, it was just like crazy. Some of those decisions that were like, oh man, if you'd done it a different way, I don't think it would have had quite the impact. And we see that with Pillow Cube all the time. Like there's stuff that's like, man, how did we kind of get to where something happened that was really like, man, we were really lucky, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it was just this crazy experience of even Facebook. Like Facebook changed, I think, probably about a year in to that whole experience, where every time someone posted, not all of their friends saw it. Or like early on with Color Run, we were going really hard after likes. Like, let's get as many likes as we can. And then a year in, it's like, oh, by the way, you have to pay for all those likes to see your posts. And so it's like, man, we spent so much time and money focusing on. But like, to show you the scale, like Color Run in 1 year from launch had 3 million likes. Like it was just that fast. It was just going crazy. So it was a really fun experience. And kind of while I was doing that, I also started a YouTube channel with a friend. And we started doing videos that were going viral. And so I just kind of fell in love with like, man, I love this virality.
What were the YouTube videos?
So the channel was Scott DW. It was with Scott Wynn. We did like Fruit Ninja in real life, Kitten Air, just like crazy stuff that was going viral. And Scott's like an amazing cinematographer. But I was always like, he was fascinated in kind of like the video world, potentially making movies. That was kind of like the path he wanted to go down. And for me, it was always like, I love the idea of using this for entrepreneurship. Like this is a tool in my tool belt of, can you use these videos? Like this is even like, Color Run was like pre any Harmon Brother videos. This is before Dollar Shave Club.
Yeah.
Like people were not using virality at the time to like launch businesses. It wasn't like a common thing. So I just kind of fell in love with that whole process of like, how do you get a bunch of people who've never heard of something to share something, talk about something, grow something? And that's kind of been the focus of the last like 12 years, 11 years is just using those tools. So like, how do you create a household name or a household brand?
How do you make everyone want to talk about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, and
So,
being good
fun
at
process.
that, I was thinking about that today because you've got Creatably. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Like, I'm convinced that you could pretty much just start anything right now. Like, even if it's a super saturated thing. But if you're good at that,
Yeah.
you'll immediately
absolutely.
be successful.
That's
right.
what's even funny about Pillow Cube. Like,
Well,
literally,
that's what I was going to kind of segue into is like
Yeah.
pillows.
Yeah. It was
they're
about
awesome
the last
pillows.
thing we wanted to do.
Well, that's
Yeah.
a part of me was wondering, like, did you just like throw a dart at the board? Like, let's just pick like a random thing that we all use
Yeah.
every day, soda or bottled water.
Well, that is part of the process. It's something
know what I
that
mean? Like-
everyone uses all the time. Like,
Right.
That's part of the
Yeah.
formula. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, but how do you, I mean, you think of the big dogs and the whole bedding,
Yeah.
mattress, pillow space, like there's some big boys.
Yeah.
But then you look at like all the Purple and all these
Yeah.
companies, Casper, all these, mail. I mean, there's some innovation there with like mailing to your house, but that's not what's making them popular. What's making them popular is it's just direct to consumer, but their social media and their video stuff is it's hilarious,
Yeah.
right? And then the product is good, obviously,
Yeah.
but I think you could almost jump into anything now, no matter how, like you could peanut butter. And if the peanut butter tastes like Jif, you could be huge just by having great
Yeah.
social media and great,
Yeah.
virality, as you call it.
No, that was really interesting with pillows. So we had Creatably kind of after I did some other stuff, did some other event companies, decided I didn't want to do events because they're the worst. There's so much work.
Right.
And so
did you
eventually
start Creatably?
I started Creatably.
Okay.
So what is Creatably?
5
Just a
years
quick
ago.
little
Yeah.
summary for the listener.
So it's like a marketing agency that we focus on this whole process of like, how do you get viral kind of explosive growth?
Is it all around like a physical product? Is it
No,
always
we've
around a physical
done
product, I
we've
guess?
done software, apps, non-physical products. We definitely do mostly physical products because I think it just works. Kind of one of our keys is like we want to demonstrate how it makes a difference in people's lives. So software can be harder.
Sure.
But we've done we did a sweater. If you've seen the sweater investing app that's gone really crazy, we launched that.
Okay.
So yeah, like we do people sweaters in Boulder, we do people in New York, LA, San Francisco, Miami. But like here in Utah, we launched or really early kind of started working with Kizik, Gab.
We're all wearing our Kizik's. We
Dude.
just got them today.
Love them. Will's wearing Kiziks.
Yep.
Homey, Owlet. So we've had like a really good run of being able to pick like, hey, this is ready for explosive growth. And so that was kind of the natural process. I started it 5 years ago, and we were just kind of like finding things that were like, I know I can blow this up.
So you just really casually named a lot of really awesome brands. Like, that was super casual. Like,
That was a humble flex.
He wasn't being humble.
but like,
I wasn't.
are you extremely picky? Because most like creative agencies, marketing agencies,
Yeah.
they will help whoever can pay them,
Yeah.
right? And they don't have that type of track record. So either you have like 1,000 that you didn't mention and you just kind of cherry picked a couple, or
Yeah.
you kind
Or
of
he's just really good. no
hit it
matter
out
what
of the
he
park.
does.
No,
And so
so
like,
He turns them into
Yeah.
big brands.
well, yeah, that's part of the question. Like,
Yeah.
how,
Yeah.
like, what is this?
no, it's a really good question. So that's kind of what happened is like we started doing work with people. We were really picky. There was definitely ones that we picked, but like that didn't work. But I would say like most of them have done well.
Yeah.
And so as we grew, we started to kind of have that challenge of like, okay, there's other agencies that just get to a point where you're like, hey, we'll take anybody. That's like one route we could go is like, okay, look what we've already done for these amazing brands who are now growing and blowing up. Now let's just do work for anybody.
Yeah.
That wasn't appealing to us. The other idea was like, do we try and create some other service or something that can kind of appeal to the people we don't think will blow up and kind of separate it out? But
So is the whole service like virality? Like, we're going to get you to go viral. Is that essentially like you're going to launch the brand that way? Is that kind of the idea?
yeah, like how do we go grab attention, get people to know who we are, get like tons of awareness, but awareness that actually like sticks.
Yeah.
Like that kind of it blows me away with Pillow Cube, but like Will and I will we went to LA a week and a half ago, and we're like at Lululemon talking to the girl, and she's like, what are you guys doing? We're like, well, we own this like side sleeping pillow company. She's like, Pillow Cube? And we're like, yep, that's it.
That's
And like just
awesome.
everywhere, like people just have seen, we have hundreds of millions of views on the video, like 450, I think now. And so
700.
700. Okay. Will looked. So there's just crazy awareness. So that's essentially what we're saying. Like, hey, as you're trying to build this brand, if you fit this model of like something that most people use, so like shoes, like a lot of people have babies. There's just those things. A lot of people have teenagers that need a phone. So we look for those products that like this can be a household name, like it has enough size. But then how do we demonstrate it in a really fun, unique way where you start getting people to be like, oh, I know what that is. And so that was what was interesting. We were kind of debating this, like, okay, as an agency, you kind of can't scale this because at some point we're going to hit a max of like how many cool brands there are.
For sure.
And even now, like Creatably's talking to just so many of the like coolest brands out there. And so what we kind of came to as a decision was, okay, we can be picky by doing some of our own stuff. So let's start investing in some of these brands so that we become an owner with them. So we like the first one we did that with was Ann Color. If you've seen the Ann Color shirts that are water resistant and stain resistant. And so we did that with them, with a bunch of others. Sweater, we were one of the investors. And then the other thing we said was like, hey, let's start our own. Like, let's start something. And so we started talking about tons of ideas. It was like, oh, let's do this. Let's do this. And I just kind of like this was an idea. This pillow idea was an idea I had when I was like 10 years old. I had a buddy whose mom was Japanese, and she told me about Asian pillow boxes, and I was just like, oh, that's a crazy idea. And even like 6 or 7 years ago, I was like, maybe I should do like a wood box, because that's like what she told me about is like a lot of cultures, Tongans, Samoans, a lot of Pacific Islanders, but like a lot of people in Asia, South Koreans have like a bag almost that they fill with buckwheat that's in the shape of a cube. So there's a lot of cultures that...
And that's what they use as their pillow?
Yeah, that's their pillow.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So this friend, his mom, like she'd slept on a wooden box wrapped in a towel. Like that was their pillow.
Is that where you got that
side.
towel trick from? Was
Yeah.
No. But it's a good one. That's
Yeah.
crazy. So they sleep on something. It's hard.
Yeah. Like Chinese people like do not like soft mattresses, soft pillows. Like they like things that kind of more ergonomic and kind of fit their body. So that was like, I just threw this idea out and I was like, I don't know if this is idea, like, but I've been thinking about it forever. Like any sofa that has that like right height of armrest, like if you're a bigger dude with broad shoulders, like you've laid on a sofa like that, you're like, dude, this is way better than pillows.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure.
So yeah, it was just this idea, but it was literally, we worked with mattress companies. We were always getting pitched by mattress companies that were like, we do not want to go in that space. Like
Yeah.
it's so crowded.
Right.
We've done work for some of those brands. Like it's just so hard. And so it was kind of like, well, and so we kept talking about ideas and we didn't have anything else. I was like, let's just do a Kickstarter. Like, let's just see what happens. And so we had some downtime for the agency one week and we're like, let's just kind of do everything this week. And so like the designer made a brand and we just did it really quick and launched this Kickstarter. And it was like, oh, cool. Like I think it did 40 grand on the Kickstarter, 120 grand on the Indiegogo. Like, oh, that's nothing crazy. Like, and then just kind of let it do its thing. Like we'd all work
And
on
at
it
that point,
a little
I
bit.
mean, that's just conceptual. There's no product. It was all just this idea.
It was like one. So I had taken a couple foam samples that someone had sent us that was like 12 by 12 by 3. And I'd taken 2 of them and laid down and was like, oh, that pillow is amazing. Like I'd always thought that foam just wasn't firm enough. And so I'd taken that and I used spray glue and I like sprayed those 2 pieces of foam together. And then I had a seamstress for like $50 make us a cover for it. And then I just started having friends like, hey, lay down on this. Tell me what you think. And people were like, that looks really stupid. Did you make this yourself?
It did. Yeah, it did look stupid.
It looks really dumb. And then people would lay on it and be like, whoa, that's like really comfortable though. Like I am shocked how nice that is. And so I liked that, like that connected for me of like, it looks stupid, but when you try it, it's like unbelievable.
Because you're like, oh, we can make some good content around this.
Yep. Like it looks dumb. It looks weird. It's shocking. And then we made like 20 samples, and this was like before the Kickstarter, but we like made 20 samples and gave them to friends, and those friends and family, like I just called them up and was like, hey, I only have 20 samples. I need them back. And they all like lied about like, oh, I don't know where it is. I'm like, oh, well, like, could you look for it? And they're like, well, can I like keep it for one more week? And I like was like, oh, we're onto something.
Yeah.
Like, and that's now become like part of what I do with other products that we're testing and trying. And is I give it to people and then just ask like, hey, could I have that back? And if people are, even new products for Pillow Cube, if people are like, yep, here you go. You're like, obviously that wasn't that great. But when people are like, no, can I buy it? Could I keep it? Or they lie about it. Like,
That's really interesting.
because I think
What a cool test.
Yeah.
What a cool test to do.
I want in on the testing. I want to be a beta tester.
Yeah, I want to be a beta tester for all this stuff.
We'll put both of you on the group. We have a beta group that we use for testing. But that's like something I've learned. Like I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, you ask people like, you give them to your friends and family. Like, did you like it? And they're like, what do I say? They don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't know what to really say. But then sometimes, you get people who go way too far in the like, let me analyze your business. And you're like, well, who are you to do that? And so for me, it's really just like, all I want to know is, do you want to keep it? because I don't care, because even people were telling me like, dude, that space is so crowded, you don't want to go into it. But I was like, yeah, but the product kind of blows people away. So it was enough that we said, let's just launch the Kickstarter. Let's see what happens. And we really, like, for that first year of Pillow Cube, creatively, we were super busy. Like, we just kind of let it do its thing. We were investing in all these new brands. And Pillow Cube was just like, I will still remember, I would like call Will up and be like, dude, we're making like $1,000 a day.
He was pumped about
Crazy.
$1,000. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just nuts. And then it was like, dude, now we're making $2,500 a day. Now we're making $5,000 a day. Now we're making $10,000 a day. And it just kind of kept going up and up and up. And it hit a point like probably around $5,000 to $10,000 a day where I was like, okay, this is like something.
Yeah.
We're making $10,000 a day on this.
And you weren't
business
really
that we're-
putting much into it.
like we were putting, luckily, like Creatably had probably 20 employees at that point. So like everyone would work on it a couple hours a week. But like,
Was like we're all creatively either, do they either have ownership in it, or is it just another one of the projects that they were like paid to work on?
so everyone who had ownership in Creatably did have ownership in Pillow Cube. I just
Okay.
kind of transferred that over. But like everyone, like there were rewards, and we were using some of that for like, oh, let's go do a fun thing as a group.
Yeah.
And so people were excited about it too, because it was like, hey, like now we have two businesses that are working. But yeah, everyone was like super pumped about it. They did an amazing job of just like taking ownership, and
That's cool.
everyone was just working on it. But it was such an interesting, and I actually think it's like a whole kind of new model of entrepreneurship. I think typically we have like one or two founders who get into something and they're just like obsessed with that thing and so focused on it. And a lot of times what we see, because we usually don't from like Creatably standpoint, it's why we started investing, but like usually really early is tough for us because we're getting in and it's like you don't really have money yet. You kind of haven't proven out your product yet. You haven't kind of tweaked it and fine-tuned it. But another thing I noticed is like you often have two or three like kind of founders and there's like not enough for them to do. And so they kind of just like are bulls in china shops. Like they're just kind of like breaking stuff and you're like, dude, just chill out. Like it's just got to naturally, like there are things, even with the viral explosion and the viral growth, like there are things that just naturally take time and happen over time. And so that was something that I saw with Pillow Cube. Like no one was doing that. Like we were busy. And so it was like once a week we were coming together like, oh, we got to do that. Let's fix that. Let's change this. And then as agency people, we were very accustomed to working on 50 things at once. And so it was kind of like, okay, this week I did 2 or 3 things. We made these changes. Here's what happened when we made those changes. And so it was like a very emotionless, like we're not like, oh my gosh, this is my baby, it has to work. It was like, oh, that didn't work. Okay, let's not do that again.
So how
So it
did
was
you
really
guys
good.
like transition into physical products? I mean, because you guys had been in services, right? I mean,
Yeah.
everything you had done was kind of service based. Products is very different.
Yeah.
So did you have someone as part of the team who was like either oversaw that piece, or did everyone just kind of pitch in?
I mean, I did a lot of that at Vivint, and so that I definitely like kind of used some of that experience. But yeah, like a lot of it was us learning too. Like there was a lot of things that I think was beneficial of both us knowing it enough that we could kind of get stuff done, but then also like doing things that people were like, hey, no one does that.
Like what?
Oh, just, I mean, the idea in general, like everyone in the mattress space thought it was stupid. They're just like, that's such a dumb idea. Like, that's not how pillows are made. Like, someone from one of the big bedding companies was like, do you not realize, like, no one makes a pillowcase that fits that? And I was like, dude, that's awesome. But they were like, no, now you're like, there's going to be like Pillow Cube cases and non-Pillow Cube cases, or like cube-shaped pillowcases and non-cube shaped. And I was like, yeah, but that's great. Like, we'll be the only ones who sell those. And so there were just a lot of things that like industry people saw as dumb. Like, oh, that's not how that works. No one does it that way. Like cutting the most expensive thing. Like, this is the funniest. We always get this comment. Like, it's just a block of foam. Why is it so expensive? The most expensive way to make a pillow is out of a solid block of foam. Like most pillows, when you get shredded memory foam pillows, what they're doing is they're taking the scraps left over from making
Anything.
furniture, seat cushions, mattresses, and they're just cutting it up in a giant wood chipper, like a legit $10,000 huge wood chipper. Mm-hmm. And that's how they make shredded memory foam mattresses. So you're just getting all these scraps of stuff left. And so there were a lot of people who are like, oh, it's so, you can sell a memory foam pillow. Like the My Pillow, we've like talked to suppliers, like that costs like $1 to make and they're selling it for 60. Our stuff is really expensive. Like we have much lower margins, but it's just a killer experience for people. So, but there's just a lot of that stuff that we just didn't know. And so we were just like, oh, let's try this. But as time's gone on, we've brought in more experts of like, hey, how do we add to kind of that team and roster of people so that we can keep that, hey, we're willing to do stuff that no one else is willing to do. But at the same time, like not, there were smart things we did. There were also dumb things of like, oh, you're sourcing that through this factory. That's the wrong group. Or we at one point were using kind of a factory that really was just outsourcing to a bunch of other people. And then they were just having it all shipped to them, assembling it.
Kind of like an agent almost?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was smart and dumb stuff that we did.
Sure. So Will, were you involved on the Creatably side or did you just come as part of Pillow Cube?
I'm just here for the Bud Light. No, Jay and I have been friends since college, and so we've always kind of done like some partnerships in business and helped each other with different businesses. I had a wealth management business actually, and I helped him a little bit with some influencer stuff. I worked with a lot of influencers on the wealth management side and just kind of really understood how that business worked. And then when PillowCube started to take off, he's like, hey, help me come run some of this influencer piece and help me with some of the kind of growth and social media stuff. And so that's when I hopped over and did a lot of that too. Yeah.
Interesting. So is that your full-time on the marketing side then or?
Yeah, I mean, full-time is kind of a funny word because like Jay and I own 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 businesses together. And then also I still have my financial planning, wealth management practice. Yeah. And but yeah, I do a lot of like kind of that influencer piece, getting pillows to, famous people and then trying to talk them into posting about it is one of my like strong suits.
Okay. Interesting.
Will's like the king of just building relationships with people that I think like we were even talking about this on the way over that I think a lot of entrepreneurs take too much of like a short-term greedy mentality with relationships. And from day one, I've been like, Will, just like make relationships for us that we'll be able to leverage and use and hopefully give to them as well and create this really like great symbiotic relationship with people that will benefit us as entrepreneurs for 20, 30 years. Like, and that's what Will's been able to do is just meet people that it's like, hey, this is what we're working on right now. But like, we want to be friends and work on stuff. And so it's been amazing to see who we're having conversations with about like investing and, hey, we can send deals your way. And I think that that's important for entrepreneurs. Like it's easy to get in this mentality of like meeting people and be like, what can I get from you right now? And one of the best things I've learned from Will is like, we just give and give and give. And to the point where people start being like, hey, could I like please do something for you? Like one of the most famous artists in the world, his DJ the other day said like, we were going to send him something, a new mattress. And he was like, yeah, but can I get you tickets to our like tour, please? Like you guys just keep giving me stuff. And so I think that's something I've learned from Will is like, just give. And the people who just always take, like you kind of learn like, okay, that's a person who just always takes. But like most people, it's amazing to me how they just want to pay that back. And then we just keep giving and it just becomes
everyone
amazing.
is helped from someone, right?
Yeah.
At some point. And so paying it forward.
Yeah.
I tried talking 2 people into doing like big family parties last week so I could like do something back. It's that exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's just like, I think I've taken the last 10 things, or 10 appointments or whatever. Like there's this doctor buddy of mine that I'll text or whatever. And it's funny, like, I think you're totally right. I think most people are good like that.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
they want to give.
For them, they want to
pay
it back. There's definitely some that don't though.
Yeah.
So,
and you learn that by giving, and then you kind of realize like, oh, that person is just someone who isn't that way. And
who are my people? Who are the people I want to be around with that are like quality, good, caring, generous people. Like you learn, and then those are the people you keep giving and taking care of. And
and you can tell pretty quick.
Oh yeah,
usually. But yeah, that's cool. That's interesting.
I think I love getting to the point. Me and Will are this way, and we joke about this. Like I love hitting a point with a lot of people where you've just like stopped keeping track.
Yes.
It's like literally if that person called me and was like, hey, I'm 10 hours away and my car broke down, I need you to come get me. You're like, yeah, I'll be there in 10 hours.
Yeah, that's pretty
and it's
awesome.
like, who do you have like that? And I think that's hard when you're starting out because if you didn't grow up in the entrepreneurial world from the sense of like knowing VCs, like I didn't know any VCs in college. I didn't know any investors. And that was really hard. Part of trying to be an entrepreneur is you just don't have access to those people. Like you can do pitch competitions, but I think that where my mentality shifted was just looking at people more like, hey, just get to know them. And then that stuff just naturally happens. I like when friends of ours are like, so would Creatably like be willing to do a campaign for me? Because you never say anything.
Right.
Like, I just don't want to pitch you. If
Yeah.
you want it, you know it's
You have
there.
to ask.
Yeah.
You have to ask.
So anyways.
And I think that's a good lesson for everything, right? Like,
Yeah.
you've got to ask for help. You got to ask for, it's like squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's not that people aren't willing. This is marriage advice too, folks. Write this down. Okay. Especially for
What are you asking for?
Especially for the wife to the husband. We can't read minds. Like if you want us to do the dishes, I can't read your mind.
Just
So
say,
you can ask me
yeah.
and I'll say yes. But generally it's like you have to figure it out on your own to get the points.
Yeah.
What are you asking your wife for?
Oh, Actually, I'm not asking for anything. I have no problem asking.
Uh-huh.
It's generally the other way around. They kind of want you to pick up on signals.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at that. And so anyway,
No,
it works for building companies as well.
yeah. No, it's true. Even today I had someone come in and say that.
That's why I say it's a good life lesson.
It's so true. I had someone come in, he has equity, and it was just like, hey, I want to be a part of this other thing. Like, oh, cool. I was like, oh, like, did I do something wrong? Like, no, you just never asked. So, and
It's a great
and I think
example.
it is. It's like, it's totally fine to just at some point just say, hey, do you want to do this? And so, but it's really like, it really does blow me away. And I think that's what also, as a young entrepreneur, you kind of forget is that this is like a long process. Like every time I talk to students, I'm like, dude, I want to be an entrepreneur for 50 years. Like that's my goal.
Right.
Is that in 50 years from the time I graduated college, I'll still be investing, being an entrepreneur, starting things. So when you think of that as your timeline, instead of like, I feel like every college kid is like, I need to have like a massive exit in the next 4 years. It's like, dude, that's just not realistic. Like the Zuckerbergs, the Snapchat guy, that is so the exception. Not even like the exception. It's like,
Well, and the truth is,
exception
It's like
even
lottery
the,
odds.
even the people that get the exits, most of them are more unhappy afterwards
yeah,
because now they have this massive void in their life.
Yeah.
And then everything spirals. Like it's very common. I mean, you've seen this in the money world, and a lot of people that have sudden inflows, I mean, all of a sudden they don't know what to do with themselves
Yeah.
anymore. So you have to love the process. You have to love the idea
Yeah.
of what you're doing, right? And not wait for not work to this one moment, because once that moment happens, it's just going to let
It's
you
over.
down.
Well, if it's
gonna let
about
you
the
down.
moment, you'll probably never succeed anyway.
yeah,
Like you've got to be passionate about whatever it is that
But like,
creates
how
that
often you're like,
moment.
oh, once I get this, then I'm going to be happy.
Yeah,
or once
that's
this
not true.
happens, then everything, then I'm successful once I've had an exit, or I'm successful once I've raised money. And then like once they do that, it's like, oh, that's just like a thing. Like
Yeah.
there's really not significance around that.
And what you want is fluid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like every few years we grow up, we experience different things, and what you want changes.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And so to think like that right out of college, it's like, it's probably going to change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I mean, I didn't find barbecue till I was 34?
really.
I never even cooked a thing. So it's just like, you just kind of never know.
And at one point, you were probably like, man, the idea of having my own restaurant would be insane.
Yes.
Crazy.
That's funny because that's part of my story was when the guy that taught me barbecue called and it's like, hey, do you still want to open a restaurant someday? It was like, well, yeah, I think that'd be cool. It wasn't like
Yeah.
it was pipe dream, right?
Yeah.
At that point. And so, but after going down and cooking with him, it became more realistic. But even then I came back from Utah, and if it wasn't my cousin calling me and saying like, here's money, let's open a restaurant, I
Yeah.
don't know that I ever would have.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, like what you want. I like what you said about being an entrepreneur for 50 years, because it's just like, you want to build things,
Yeah.
but it's just like Pillow Cube. Even when you started Pillow Cube, you didn't really start Pillow Cube.
Yeah.
It just kind of
morphed
took a life
and
of its
changed,
own,
yeah. I was literally talking to Jess on Saturday at the
Right.
game, but we were talking about that, like, that there's a point in she was like, the one of the first months for Mixers was just like, oh my gosh, like, we're making money.
Right.
And that was crazy to her. And same thing with Pillow Cube. Like, there's a time where you're like, I can't believe people are buying something I created. And that will shift. And so if you don't love that process, because all of a sudden it's going to be like, we were also talking about how early on the Shopify ding was like better than Instagram or any social media. It was like, oh my gosh, we got another sale.
Dopamine.
Yeah. And then over time that, like, I turned off the chime because it started to become like, I don't want it. And something that like brought me
money.
excitement, blah, more money. No. But like, it does shift, and you have to be really in love with the craft and the process of doing it, because that thing that, like, what I would say is like that early hit of like, oh, we made a sale, can become just like an empty, like, all you're pursuing is this like empty kind of reward from like approval from others. And so I think that's what's so interesting about entrepreneurship is like, if you really want to make money, there's so many better ways to make money.
For sure.
It's so true.
Well, and it still requires, as much as we've kind of talked about Pillow Cube kind of having a life of its own to start,
Yeah.
it still required passion.
Yeah.
Like, it still required you believing, like, you had this idea. I mean, it's kind of cool. You had the idea years and years before. You actually put some thought into it, and you liked the product. Like, that's still a huge part of, at least I would say, in the consumer goods world, right? Like, you can have great videos, you can have great content, you can have a great network, but it still has to hit. Like, people still need to like it, right?
I think people typically, and I think that's, again, something you learn just from experience, but like, you get past that point where you're not looking for a silver bullet of like, oh, just great marketing can do it. It's like, no, it is multiple things. It has to be more than just, and often like just a killer product is also like, you have to do more than just the one thing. And so I think that's what's hard about entrepreneurship is there is no like secret hack. There's no like silver bullet that is just like, oh, and then you become rich and famous and you get all this praise. It's like, no, and that shouldn't be the goal. Like, it really is so fun. Like, the thing that still blows me away is when we hear people who, like, Will talks to, we launched a new product and Will was just calling up people who bought the product and like, hey, like, why'd you buy? Like, what was the motivation? And just the stories of like people who are like, oh, we had neck pain for 20 years and I wasn't able to sleep, and then all of a sudden I buy the Pillow Cube and like my life changed. Like, you literally changed the quality of my life. To me, that still is like the best feeling. Like,
so, like,
all those
are you
other
like
things.
full-time Pillow Cube now, or are you still running Creatably? Like, how do you balance that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Same as my story, I think. Right? Like, he's just running like 6 things and got a big team, and everyone's chipping in and doing their part. And
I think I've embraced the. I don't know if you've read Rocket Fuel, but like 100%, like, I'm a visionary. That is who I am. That's where I'm happiest, is coming up with vision for things. And I really like delegating to people.
Yeah.
Like, I always like jokingly tell people like, here's like the worst micromanager and I'm the flip side of that. But there are negatives to that too.
Yeah.
Like, there's negatives to being micromanaged, but there's also some pros. Like, you get told exactly what's expected of you.
Yeah.
Here's what I want from you. And maybe I'm not the exact flip of that. But
no,
like,
you are.
Yeah. I'm very like, I don't know, try it, figure it out, do it. And so people who love autonomy and who love like, I'm not going to be given hardly any direction at all, really thrive. And people who are wanting more like, hey, what should I do? It's like, they almost always hate working with us.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, dude, we're just not that group. We're just a group of guys and girls who kind of like do our own thing, and we collaborate, and we love working together. But there's not a lot of hand-holding at all.
Yeah.
And so,
But that's cool because you're putting faith in your people too.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you're obviously probably hiring smart people.
yeah, there's
And I mean, that's got to make them feel like, I mean, I think my default mode here is that way, but I don't know that it's so much that as much as just I like my freedom to kind of come and go as I please.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to be able to delegate that stuff out. But
yeah.
it's funny, the more I hear you talk, the more I don't think of this as a personality relation.
Yeah.
But just like Bronco Mendenhall comes to mind. Like, I think he loves coaching teams that need to start over.
Yeah.
And like rebuild. Like,
Yeah.
it almost sounds like that's your happy place, is creating, building. As soon as it gets to humming, next thing.
Yeah. No, it is 100%. Like, I love that early process. And I think that's another part of being an entrepreneur or being a creator, is you have to really embrace who you are.
Yeah.
Like, anytime you're kind of, especially as an entrepreneur, it's so easy to look at other people and be like, why am I not like that person?
Man, I think that's a really important thing that you just said. I struggle with that a lot sometimes.
Yeah. And I think every single one of us looks at, like, I look at every single person on my team. I'm like, dude, I wish I was good at that. Like, there's things Will's good at. Josh on our team's like this amazing designer, like just unbelievable. And I'm always like, dude, I wish I was good at design like he is. And he can just sit and work in a room by himself for 9 hours. And I like can't sit still for 20 minutes. I'm like 20 minutes of email. I'm like, okay, I need to hang out with the person. And so, like, I look at that and I'd admire that, but I'm like, but that's also not me.
Right.
And I had an early boss who was always like, dude, you'd be so amazing if you could just be detail oriented. Like, if you could combine that with who you are, you'd actually be like world class. And I'm so glad I didn't listen to that advice. That instead I embrace fully who I am, and I hired people who are detail oriented, or surrounded myself with detail oriented people. And we together as a group were like great at that. And that's been a really fun part of both Creatably and Pillow Cube and all the other businesses, is like, you can have someone, or you can have an organization that is good at things that I'm really bad at.
Right.
And I think that's also what's hard about getting started, because you're wearing all the hats, and you're often wearing the hats you're bad at.
Yeah.
And so,
But it also
so
teaches you a lot about, you can do anything if you have to.
Yeah.
But I think that the people you hire to take over those spots respect you ultimately more, because they know that you could jump in and do it if you have to.
Yeah. That's actually one of the things I love about David Nealman, who we were talking about earlier, is the founder of JetBlue. Like, he would fly on flights and like do the drink service and be kind of a flight attendant and walk around and talk to guests. Like, I think you can never disconnect from like,
stay in touch.
hey, I know how to do, I know how to pack pillows. I know how to ship pillows. Like, being able to learn those things, I also think gives you a lot of, as a leader, gives you a lot of respect for the people who like, man, we're asking people to come here and for 9 hours in a row pack pillows. And how do we make that better? How do we make that fun? How do we make that kind of part of our culture? And those are all things that like we constantly want to improve. But
It also keeps your staff on their toes.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not irreplaceable. If he has to, he can fire my ass and jump right in.
And Jay is not going to pack pillows in more than 20 minutes. I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah.
The pillow packers are safe.
10 minutes in, I'm like, oh, okay. I need to have intellectual.
How has Pillow Cube evolved, or is it going to continue to evolve, or is it kind of going to run its course and you'll step into something else?
No, I think we're super excited. We just finalized a partnership and investment with Tamarack and Maloof. So like, Pillow Cube's super exciting. There's so many things we're still like launching and figuring out and testing. And that's something like, I think almost that constant reinvention of like, how do we do something new and different and kind of break those molds is so exciting. And so starting new things is really like, I just love that process. And so I'm always, and Creatably has been a great vehicle for that, of like, oh, let's start another one. Let's try another thing.
Yeah.
Last year we bought a company called Stair Slide. It's like that slide for your stairs that you probably have seen on Instagram, and your kids can go down. We were the original investor in that and helped kind of start it. So like, that's just a natural thing that I just always love doing.
Yeah.
I just love companies. I think I always tell people, like, find something you'd be willing to do for free And then that's where you'll make the most money.
Yeah.
Because I would talk about entrepreneurship and start companies and work on companies. And I have like for all the time before these things that worked, I was spending my nights and weekends with friends like, hey, let's start a company and let's try this. Right. And it wouldn't work for whatever reason. And we learned from that. But you have to be willing to do what you love for free. And I think that then all of a sudden work becomes really fun. You're like, this is what I would do on the weekend for nothing.
So a lot of what I do is just like DM supermodels now. It
sounds awesome.
Will would also do that for free. And say, are you a side sleeper?
Yeah.
Got a pillow for you.
Weird question. Okay.
We have the sleep lab at our company. No, well, I think that's just a better way of describing the overused word passion, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I was doing with barbecue. So I was cooking on the weekend with nobody to even feed.
Yeah.
I just loved the process of cooking.
Yeah.
And so, I think the word passion can be overused sometimes, but really ultimately that's what it is. Would you do it for free? And if you would, you're probably working harder at it and doing it better than anybody else that's doing it, right?
Yeah.
Because most people need something for doing something. And so it's what's that saying? Like, never work a day of your life or whatever that is. Do something you love and you'll never work again. I mean, there's some truth to that.
Yeah. Kind of half true, because every time you're doing something you love, there's that point where you're like, this is hard and this sucks, and you have to fight through it, whether it's like sports or whatever. So it's like, it's great, but you still have to find that. Well,
and there's certain things that it's like you with packing boxes, right? Like there's certain things it's like,
I don't want to do that.
I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
But if you love it and you're passionate about it, it's easier to get through those speed, over those speed bumps. And so
it's even funny, like Will and I will go hang out with people. Like we were with an NBA player recently who's very successful, and he just described it as like, it's a job. Like I've passed that point where I like love it.
Yeah.
It's now hit that full job status. And then we've talked to other people who are professional athletes who are like even farther in their careers and they're like, no, I love it. And I don't think either one is like good or bad. I just think it's like a difference of, there are people who you can get into a career, and the one who said like, hey, it's now kind of a career, there are things he's doing outside of sports that he's really excited about. And so he's kind of now approaching that point of like, okay, I've kind of reached that point where now this is a job. I'm kind of starting to think through what's next. And he's looking at the things he's like, what am I willing to work on the nights and weekends? Even as someone who makes $10+ million a year or more, like he's willing to sit down and be like, hey, what do I want to do with my life?
You still have to be fulfilled, right? I mean, and that passion and him loving it, I'm sure he loved it, and that's what got him there, right?
Yeah.
But once you're there, I mean, that I could say that about this place too. It's definitely not as fun as what I did in the driveway, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing every day.
Yeah.
But the part of it that I will never stop loving is watching people eat the food and love it.
Yeah.
Right? That's great. But it is more of a job now where it's to the point where, I either am like what you said earlier about like being happy with who you are. Like I get asked probably 10 times a day, when are you going to expand? When are you going to expand? I'm like, I'm happy where I'm at right now. You know what I mean? But then I'll go home and be like, am I lazy? Like, am I lazy if I don't expand? Like, but lately it's kind of shifted to, I want to find that next thing that I love doing. And it might still be in this realm. It might be expanding, but I'm just trying to think of what that next exciting thing is. And like you said, even if you're a multi-millionaire, you still need that fulfillment, right? Yeah. You still need something, the purpose, like you talked about earlier, Andrew, with, people getting a big exit, and it's just like, well, now I'm depressed. I have no, what's my purpose?
No direction.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's the hardest thing, is like fully embracing that, like, hey, that might be some people's paths is I'm going to start 100 of these and that's what I want to do. And other people, it's like, no, that's not what I want to do. And it's so important to just stick to that. Like, this is who I am.
Right. That's the key right there. You talk about, you got to know yourself.
Yeah.
And in that moment.
Yeah.
Like it is always shifting.
Give yourself permission to change and evolve.
Totally right.
What you want, what you need can change and evolve. So that's super important.
And not just do the exact, I think that's like, even with strategy, we always talk about this, is like one of my favorite quotes is there's like a Hugh Nibley quote about, don't be a mirror of anyone else, be yourself. if you're a mirror of anyone else, you'll just be a reflection of the true thing. Essentially, is what he kind of says. And as we talk about that with strategy, like a lot of times it's very tempting. Like, hey, here's this company that's super successful. Let's just kind of mimic them.
Yep.
But then you're a reflection, and you're not doing it because that's the direction you should be going. And so I think it's one of the hardest things. And young people especially are always like, what's my passion? And what's really hard is like, be yourself. And often passion comes as you get good at stuff. Like I'm really passionate about being an entrepreneur, and I love it, and I've always loved it. But as I've gotten better and just honed that craft a little bit more and gotten a little bit better, like it does become more fun. Succeeding and having
It's way more fun to be
stuff,
successful.
Yeah, like just having people who like want to buy your product versus no one wants to buy your product. I wouldn't trade it. So,
Yep.
like
Sell out.
If no one came to if no one came to Bam Bams, you'd be like, this isn't fun. But it's so
Totally.
popular and everyone loves it, and that is a joy. Like it's so fun as an entrepreneur to see people like, oh, they're finding happiness and finding fulfillment in something that I created.
Right.
And I think a lot of it goes back to that. We're like naturally as humans creators, and we want to create. And so that's I think a really important part of that. But it's hard because it's when you see other people, it's so easy to be like, oh my gosh.
Comparing yourself is very easy. It's natural, right?
You can look at Crumble that's opening 100 stores a year and be like, why aren't I doing that? It's
Seriously.
like, yeah, but that's their thing. That's who they are.
Yeah.
And they're killing it. They're doing an amazing job. Like I'm blown away by that. How
That
fast
place
that's grown.
is nuts.
Yeah.
We need to get them in here too. Be fun to talk to them. But yeah, I mean, it's simple.
Yeah.
A pillow is simple.
Yeah.
A cookie is simple.
Yeah.
Like if you can take a simple thing, and if you do it really well, doesn't matter how much that has existed before.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's what always blows me away with Pillow Cube is betting is that space that even VCs have been like, why'd you do betting?
Yeah.
Like that was such a crowded, and it's like, yeah, but we found like a spot, and then we kept pushing and pushing, and now we're innovating even more. We're working on products that are going to take us more into the tech space, and it's like really fun and exciting to just see that evolving take place. But I think one of you said it, maybe Andrew, you were saying it, like early on, it was not this like, it takes those years of work to like that vision develops over time. And so,
well, you don't really know where it goes until you do.
Yeah.
Well,
You know?
I mean,
Yeah.
common story. Susan, she started. She could go to Target
Right.
and buy something without feeling bad. Like that.
Yeah.
That was the vision.
Now she
Yeah.
wants to buy a sports team. You know, it's a little bit bigger than Target.
Those hockey teams.
That's what I tried to talk her into. I'm like, let's buy this team. We could make this so cool.
Let's put together a
Dude.
now.
Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I would
Let me
love
know,
that.
because I think you definitely nailed it. Like anytime I see something that I'm like, this is an underutilized thing.
Oh man.
Like going to that game the other night was like, why are there not more people here?
I've been dealing with that for 9 years. Like there used to be, that team used to be in the league higher.
Yeah.
Like back in the 90s, that place was sold out.
Yeah.
Like every night. But that was just one step
Crazy.
higher. But yeah, that guy, he cares about his concessions and his events, and he owns some minor league baseball teams. But it's like, how much fun was that? Like, how fun was that game?
So fun.
And it's kind of exactly what you guys specialize in.
Just start an event planning business.
well,
You love that
it's-
stuff.
yeah. It's just marketing. It's marketing a product. And that's what they're not.
Yeah.
It's entertainment, but it is a product ultimately.
Yeah.
And they're not marketing it right.
Well, you look at the Jazz, like it's crazy how hard it is to get Jazz tickets now.
I
Like
just
season
gave up. I don't
tickets,
even
it's
go.
like impossible.
Yeah.
And so I would like when we were at that game, I was like, okay, here's a hockey team in a city where like Jazz tickets are sold out every single game,
And they're out of the playoffs.
and they're out of the playoffs
Right.
already. But
Low blow.
Well, no, that's just what happens every year.
Low blow.
First round.
Out.
So, no, listen, I'm a BYU fan. I can't be a
How are
Jazz
the
fan
Lakers?
right now. I don't like the Lakers either. I'm
Okay.
kind of over it. I like the Jazz. I would say I like the Jazz more than any other NBA team.
Now
Like,
just
I
stop
grew up a
talking.
Lakers fan.
Now just stop
But
talking.
I can't like BYU and the Jazz at the same time. I think I would have a heart
So
attack.
break up with BYU and come
I
to
don't-
the Jazz.
That's hard.
Who do you like, man? You're not a BYU guy?
He's a jazz freak. This guy loves the jazz.
We joked last time, you can only love one of the two because there's only so much heartbreak you can handle.
Well, I was
Yeah,
going to
that's
say,
true.
can you take a picture of yourself right when you find out that Donovan Mitchell gets traded this offseason?
I'll be fine with
He's
it.
going to
You're
be
gonna
gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have to do something.
Yeah.
I've been saying for years they need taller guards.
You don't even know what that means.
They're like,
So-
"Oh, I'm going to use that.
Hockey is, I think, the best live sport to watch.
100%.
It's not even close.
Once you go to a live game and you're close, like I remember in high school, I went to a DU game when
man.
DU was like, I think either first or second.
They won the national championship this year.
Yeah. And they were just phenomenal. And I like went to a game and was like, why do I not love hockey?
Yeah.
And then me and all my friends who like played sports in high school, we all got into like street hockey.
Yeah.
And it was just so fun. But yeah, I went to that game and was like, how is this place not at least half full?
Yeah. Well, and it's just like anything else. Like, it's just like here, like I can see a quantifiable difference if I just do a post on Instagram.
Yeah.
I'm horrible at it. Like,
Yeah.
it's like months sometimes between posts. But it's like all you have to do is remind people that it's there.
Yeah.
And I think with the Grizzlies, it's kind of the same thing. It's like it's out in West Valley. It's kind of out of the way. But I mean, it's not hard to get to. It's
Yeah.
right off of 215. But I think most people just, I had so many messages when I posted about that game the other night. Like, oh, I totally forgot about the Grizzlies. I'm
Yeah.
going to come.
Yeah.
And I mean, somebody's just not doing their job with social media over there and getting people in the seats. But yeah, anyway, I mean, I think it's an interesting example. It's a lot like what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Marketing is kind of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's hard to do.
Yeah. It's hard to do that turnaround too.
Right.
Like when you have something that's kind of like, I think that's the hardest, the thing that's always, I mean, some of even Creatably's success is like, we're definitely picking the winning horse.
Right.
A lot of time of like, well, these guys just raised a ton of money. They have a killer product. And so like, yeah, it's going to make sense. But it's hardest when people are like, hey, my business has been going down every year. Can you help me like turn this ship around? It's like, oh man,
Right.
that's where it gets really difficult. And I always am like, I want to try it, but I also
I was going to say, I would think you would be all over that.
yeah. I think we're to a point where like, well, let's maybe just see if we can put some people together and buy it.
Right.
Because you do need that infusion and of capital and new ideas and often just energy. That's the hardest thing with entrepreneurship when you start looking at it from that like longer process. I think is it's really hard to get to a point where you just realize like, hey, I might need to do the next one.
Yeah. Like let go of something.
Let go of this. I think it's really hard for entrepreneurs of like, no, I can't fail. And when you look at it more as like a 50-year process, that becomes easier because you start saying like, hey, that was a great learning experience. I've had failures. I've had a lot of things that did not work and blew up bad. But those, excuse me, those were good learning experiences, but it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's hard when it's like, as the agency being pitched, you're like, you might want to just kill this thing.
Mr. Wonderful, take this outside and just
Oh
shoot
my
it.
gosh. But then again, how
Yes.
many people have stories of people telling them that and
Yeah.
figuring it out?
Yeah.
So it's like you have to have some balls too.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, restaurants are no different. I mean, 80% failure rate.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to give me money. You know what I mean? Well, now I could probably get some, but
I'll give you
that's
$12 for
not-
some brisket.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That'll get you a quarter pound. So with meat prices right now, but yeah, I mean, you're right.
Yeah.
And I mean, the fear of failing after success too,
Yeah.
which I think that probably, I think it's a little easier to fail when you're new or inexperienced or coming up. But I think getting to a point where you've succeeded at something,
It's hard too.
I think it's kind
I think
Oh,
it's
yeah.
actually harder.
of way harder.
Yeah.
Just because the pride issue kicks in. And
Well,
it's
and then
like,
you probably have like a certain lifestyle.
Right.
You know what I mean? It gets
right,
actually more challenging.
Yeah.
Lightning strike twice doesn't happen often,
for sure.
right?
Yeah. I've talked to a lot of people who've had big exits and other entrepreneurs naturally look up to them and are like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And it's funny when you get them kind of by themselves. They're like, I want to do it again, but like, what if it doesn't work?
Uh-huh.
They have those
Yeah.
same fears of like,
Yep.
will I look like an idiot? Then will everyone say that I was just like, it was luck because I could only do it once? So it doesn't go away. Like that's the funny thing. It's
For
like
sure.
you look from when you're starting, like, oh, that person has everything I want. And then you talk to them and you're like, oh, they still have insecurities and fears. And what if I can't pull it off a second time or a third time? Or like, it doesn't matter. Even if they've done it 5 times, they're like, what if I can't do it again?
Yep.
So it's funny, the mental tricks that we kind of play. But I think that was one of the things, what you reminded, or something you said, Cam, reminded me of this, that when we were doing the YouTube channel, there were like tons of us at this Color Run event doing this video. And I'd hired all these people, and then I was like, dude, we should do a YouTube channel. Like, this would be crazy. And we were all talking about it. Me and Scott were talking about it, and everyone was like, let's do it. And then when we got back from LA, me and Scott sat down and came up with a couple ideas, and then we like texted everyone like, hey, let's do it. We're going to do it this Saturday at this park. And everyone except for Scott and one other guy, Brendan, by the way, everyone was like, are you guys like paying people? Like, is it,
Right.
is it just like
Hey, Brandon,
fun?
Gold Yeller's good buddy.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Brendan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dude, I freaking love Brendan.
Yeah.
He's a genius. And everyone else was just like, well, if there's not money, and we did this video and made this like funny kitten air video, and it ended up going viral, and J.J. Abrams reshared it, and all these crazy things. And then immediately after that, it was like, everyone was like, hey, when was the next one? But it was like been such a huge lesson for me of just like do stuff. Again, to the thing of like, what are you willing to do for free? Because you never know what will come of that. And so many people are like, will this give me immediate benefit right now?
Isn't that funny?
It's crazy.
It's like, I wonder if anybody turned down Mr. Beast for the first 6 or 7 years.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, a long time, dude. If you look at his channel,
13 years old
Yeah.
is when he started.
People are so worried about ideas. Like, oh, I got this great
they still
idea.
tell him he's stupid because he puts all of his money back into his videos. They still tell him he's dumb.
Isn't that crazy? Sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just saying, a lot of people talk about ideas. They're like, oh, I got this great idea. And one of the things I think Jay's been like really successful with is that he isn't worried about the idea. He's just like, let's do it. And
Right.
he just goes and does it. And people are so busy thinking about the idea and never actually doing anything.
I think that's the
about it,
difference between an entrepreneur and an employee,
wantrepreneur.
right? Yeah. Or even that. Like, I think the people that truly want to be an entrepreneur have the balls to just, and not to say that it's not okay to be the other way, but they have the balls to just try,
Yeah.
right? Because that's really scary. And I think it takes a certain wiring
Yeah.
to be able to kind of sidestep some security. And like you were talking about micromanaging the other day, there's a lot of people that just like, I will do the job. I just need to know what to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's hard because you don't want to fail. You don't want to look bad. Like, what if people think the idea is stupid? But you have to be able to just not
Try
worry
it.
about it.
Yeah.
And just go. And I mean, we've had so many people in here that had no idea
Yeah.
what they were doing. I didn't. Like, I knew how to cook barbecue. I knew how much money I had to open the restaurant, but it's like, you just kind of learn as you go, but
Yeah.
you just have to have the balls to just dive in and
Just do it.
go.
Yeah.
And so it's tough.
I think that's the hard, like Will was saying, like there's that middle ground of people who are like, I want to try something. And it's like, dude, just do it.
Yeah.
Like, stop talking about it. Stop pitching your idea to family.
Well,
Stop
there's no
waiting.
excuse, right? Now, I mean, it was different 20 years ago, but
Yeah.
now, like,
It's progressively.
if you want to build a
so easy.
rocket, all you have to do is get on your computer.
Yeah.
Like, there's really anything that you want to learn how to do is at your fingertips now.
Yeah.
Where before it took experience, it took mentors, it took,
Crazy.
I mean, it still obviously helps a lot to have mentors, but I mean, you can get way more education on a computer than you can in college if you want it.
Yeah. Do you remember Kaye?
Kaye.
Way back in the day, it was like 2006, one BYU business
Dude,
competition.
he designed one of the guys, Tyler.
Oh, yeah.
He actually designed the Bam Bam
Oh,
logo.
that's right.
Yeah.
He actually has told me that before. I know a bunch of those guys,
Okay.
and it just 15 years ago, like they were 2006.
Yeah.
Like what they described trying to do a D2C e-commerce company here in Utah, like crazy. Like they were paying $80,000 to get like a basic e-commerce site, and now Shopify is $30 a month,
Yeah.
and it has 10,000 times more power, more tools, more resources. And so it's exactly like it just gets easier and easier. But the thing that never gets easier is just like
doing it.
Do it. Like stop talking. And those are the hardest, like the people who are just always pitching an idea. I'm like, dude, you're waiting for the perfect idea. Pillow Cube on the surface was like about as bad of an idea. Like just dumb. Like,
well, it was,
no
I
one
remember
sleeps
before this, I was like, that's the question I want to ask. Like, why pillows? Like pillows, what a great space, only because we spend
so much
time sleeping, but it's like, you think like that is just,
Can I tell you why pillows?
yeah, of course.
So I remember the first time I laid on that prototype that Jay made, and I was like, and it was just such a good pillow for a side sleeper.
Right.
And there wasn't another product out there that was like side sleeper pillow that just crushed.
Right.
And so like I felt like we actually had magic in a bottle there, lightning in a bottle, where it's just like, hey, this is perfect, man. Let's do it, And so like we talk a lot about the marketing, a lot about that kind of stuff, but when you have a product that just like
100%
works,
Yeah.
then you're like, oh, let's nail this, 'cause
Right.
like to be able to like grow out, like marketing is to let somebody hear it the first time and get somebody to sell, but like once somebody actually buys it and then like tells people about it, that's like when the real magic
For sure.
takes off.
I remember the first time I ate Bam Bams.
Yeah.
Like to this day, I still remember like the first time I came and was like, dude, that is crazy.
Wow.
Like that is Texas barbecue in Utah. And to that point we had what? Dickies? Like it was like,
because it was that bad. Yeah.
There were three barbecue spots within a mile of here.
Yeah.
When I opened.
which again, it's like people were probably like, why like there's already barbecue spots.
Right.
It's like, but you came here and I remember that first time. I think maybe it was with
I think
you.
it probably came,
Yeah.
it came a lot.
Yeah. And then and so I think that's what's so fascinating. And something like one of my pet peeves as an entrepreneur that other entrepreneurs do, and I think all entrepreneurs should stop this, is we look at other businesses and we're like, oh man, that'd be so easy. Like people see Pillow Cube and they're like, man, I wish like someone at a SaaS company would be like, I wish I was making a physical product that's super easy to make. I'm like, yeah, that's like, but then has a lot of hard stuff. Like it's so, I just think as entrepreneurs, instead we need to look at other entrepreneurs. I'm like, dude, that is every type of entrepreneurship, physical products, food, services, events, software, each has pros and cons. And in every situation, it's insanely hard.
Oh, for sure.
There's not a single type of entrepreneurship. And I think that's like something that's comforting and reassuring, is like, it's all hard. It's just every single type. It takes a ton of guts, takes a ton of like ambition and resolve to not give up. And so I think it's just like, it really is funny how you look at it, and that every single thing you look at and you say, that seems like a crazy idea.
Right.
You know, like even like I remember I met some of the Divvy guys 8 years ago, and at the time it was like, well, that's kind of crazy idea. You know, no one
And
had
I
done
remember
that.
I was at like one of their first pitches.
Really?
Like they just got money from Paleon, and like they were at their annual event, like pitching. I was like, wonder how that's going to go for them. And
I'll tell ya.
There we go.
Did pretty good. and that's, I think, a consistent thing with entrepreneurship is it's just like all of it's hard. We're not competing against each other. You know, you're just competing against yourself and trying to
there's
do
a whole
better.
string of failures usually leading up to, I like Brock Blake, what he said, the Lendio CEO.
Mm-hmm.
Every entrepreneur has 2 or 3 fetal position moments
Oh, yeah.
leading up to their success, where it's just like, on the floor, fetal position, what the hell am I going to do? And if you don't have those, I mean, I think that's just part of the process.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, other than people that, I do struggle with like copycats sometimes, which
Yeah.
you do see a lot of that, especially with like consumer goods or, I mean, restaurants even.
I'm talking to you, Costa Vida.
Which is now kind of better than Cafe Rio.
Isn't that weird?
It
Yeah.
is kind of weird, but
I was a big Cafe Rio fan for most of that time, and now I've switched.
once they sold, it was never really the same. But yeah, I mean, it is hard.
Yeah.
It is hard. Like you don't realize the accounting, the product, like the market, like supply chain, all that stuff, gas price, it all factors in, and you just always have to be ready to. Well, look at COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, it was make or break for just about every industry out there.
Yeah.
Like you could either just fold up shop and quit, or you just have to pivot and do something different. So
Yeah. Didn't you guys like in one day figure out drive-through? Do I remember correctly when you did your Instagram post?
I had the drive-through built for like
that's what it was.
year.
Yeah.
But I was kind of too scared to like
Pull the trigger on it.
start it.
Yeah.
Just because I was like, oh man, I don't really have experience with drive-through. But again, like deadlines are really good for me. Like when crap hits the fan, like that's where I can excel. And so as soon as we found out we would have to close, the only thing I needed to do was run some wiring to some outlets and switches. So I called my electrician. I was like, okay, will you please come in here and wire this stuff up? And I was open the next day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so yeah, it was nuts.
Funny how it forces you to.
Yeah. And sometimes that's what I have ADHD. I talk about it a lot. And that's the type of stuff that really is good for me.
Yeah.
Like I need deadlines. I need accountability. I need things to like force me sometimes. Yeah. And that one was great for that. And so yeah, COVID was nuts.
Funny how I feel like almost every entrepreneur has ADHD.
Well, a couple of recent books that have come out, like there's one that wasn't necessarily published, but his title was CEO or Convict. Like, and it is true. Our prison, they predict that 80% of our prisons are filled with people with undiagnosed ADHD. But like your JetBlue founder, he talks about it a ton. Yeah. And so I think you're right. A lot of that, some of the things that benefit, we don't assess risk like other people. Like we don't really have that part of the brain that does that. Yeah. Which is a blessing and a curse. Yeah. It's a blessing if you're trying to start a business. It's a curse if you want to rob a bank. Yeah. You're like, yeah, what's the worst that can happen? It works in the movies.
Turns out kind of a lot can happen.
Yeah. But you're right.
So true.
I've talked to quite a few people in here that even some that didn't know that they had it, and now they're getting treatment for it. But
do you take medicine?
I do. I have for a long time.
Yeah. I haven't. I've done.
Are you diagnosed with ADHD?
Self-diagnosed. But if you look at the symptom list, it's like,
you're up
did they write this about you? Or
Yeah, you can focus on the things you love, and it's really struggle with the things that you don't. And so that's
why email's hard.
It's pretty normal. Yeah. But we're also really good with people. Yeah. And so...
Have you read Faster Than Normal? That's a really good one.
Actually, I have heard of that book.
Yeah. Peter Shankman, I think.
Okay. Faster Than Normal.
It's great.
Check that one out.
He talks about it like ADHD is your superpower.
Absolutely.
View it that way. Don't view it as like this negative. And so...
If it's harnessed.
Yeah.
But there's also a study saying if you have it and it's not treated, you're taking 26 years off your lifespan.
Oh, man.
Isn't that wild?
That is crazy.
So, yeah. Anyway, tangent.
ADHD. Go get...
Oh, I always feel bad when I go down the ADHD path. And it's just like, oh, here we go again.
Well, we've been down this road before.
But no, this has been fascinating. I think people love listening to this podcast for this type of thing, just the entrepreneurial thing. You know, it's like, I would love to hear stories of any listener that just finally, you know, you were talking about the entrepreneur, like just somebody that has the idea that just maybe listening to this podcast gives them the guts to just try. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so I think this has kind of all of those things that scare people we kind of talked about today. Yeah. And so hopefully this can kind of inspire some people to make a move.
Just get going. I always tell people, I hate when people tell me their startups in stealth mode. Because I'm like, stop it. Like,
I've never heard that.
Do something.
Yeah. And I should go on LinkedIn, dude. There's people with their their job. They're like, dark mode. You know, like, I'm not telling people what I'm doing right now.
The startup, we're still in.
I don't want people to know about my business because it might be successful if they knew about it.
But I think that's you have the people who it's just like, hey, just do it. It's so you really can't predict early on. You know, like I think Creatably has a really great methodology for how do we predict someone who's going, and can they explode and see huge growth, or can they not?
Right.
But like brand new things, like we're just like everyone else. We get them right, we get them wrong. Because it's just, you don't know. Like there's so many things. And so I think that there's a lot of people out there who are just beating themselves up like, I'm not smart enough. I'm not blah, 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 whatever reason. It's like, dude, just do it. Just get
Yeah,
going.
you don't know until you try.
Yeah.
And even when you start trying, you start learning things about it, and your idea can kind of morph into other things. But I think we have enough information out there to know how to do it. If you want to do it, you can do it. It's right there.
Yeah.
Especially in Utah.
Yeah.
I think Utah is a pretty incredible place for entrepreneurship. And
so many resources, so many people who want to see other people succeed.
Yeah.
So it's
I agree
amazing.
with that.
Well, thanks guys for coming on. This is awesome. So much
It
fun.
really was.
Thanks for having us.
Try some pillow cubes. They are
Worth
amazing.
it. So good.
I saw the first time I went to the Masters about a month ago, and Jake Chrisman, we get to the hotel and he pulls this cube out of his suitcase. Like, what the hell is that? He goes, you haven't seen pillow cubes? And I hadn't. This was like probably a week or two before we called you guys.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. Like a week later, I get the email from Will, like, hey, we have the podcast schedule. I want to send you one. And I was like, oh, yes. Because I totally wanted to try Jake. So
That's crazy.
Pretty nuts. Pretty awesome. But you're right. Like, you see people use it. He was upset. I mean, homeboy, like, put it in a Ziploc, like vacuum sealed it to travel with it, because he didn't want the like travel one. Was it the side?
The sidekick. Yeah.
He wanted his normal home one. But that's a pretty cool thing that you can just kind of roll it up, and I mean, you wouldn't even have to vacuum seal. You just use some big, rubber bands or zip ties or something. But he couldn't leave home without it.
Yeah.
I mean, that says something.
I love hearing stories of people that they're like, I paid more money to overnight my pillow from the hotel because I forgot it than I ever paid for the pillow because I had to have it the next day.
Yeah.
That's brand loyalty.
That's when you know you're doing something good.
Yeah.
You're doing something right.
Pretty amazing.
That's funny.
Well, thanks, fellas.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks.